Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Monday, June 2nd edition of the Daily Pulse, kicking off a brand new week, kicking off a brand new pulse here, a brand new month, I should say, here at Inside Lowell with the Daily Pulse, the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Greater Lowell and the world around it. And today we're putting a little extra emphasis on the world around it. I should have just been recording the last 15, 20 minutes as we sat here and I got my equipment all set up, because I've got two of my favorite people in the room at the same time. Greg Pappas, the guy to the left of your digital screen and monitor. Marty Lorrey to the right. Two regulars. You come here on your own. You're both big enough to host your own daily pulses. But now we combined the two of you, and I'm liking where this is going. Unless you two clam up on me. Now that I hit the record button.
That doesn't happen. I always say talk too much, but at least we tell the truth.
You
live
do.
with the truth.
And there's some great, fascinating stuff here. And what I found is when you two say something, it very often gets proven shortly thereafter, or eventually down the road, history proves it correct. So I want to talk about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening. Well, the world around it is coming to Lowell, Massachusetts, with a ton of ICE activity and controversies flaring everywhere. We've had a couple of stories over the last several days on InsideLowell.com. We'll talk about that, tie it into everything happening. And then I'm just going to let the two of you go, because I think it'll just spin out into everything from the Kennedy assassination to the courts and all sorts of world history. We're going to get to all of it. Let me just quickly thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booten. He is a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He is a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, the one call you need to make is to Ray Booten. RealEstateRayBooten.com is the web address. Get all the contact info there. RealEstateRayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And thank you to WellPoint for hosting us here in the WellPoint studios. Thank you to Ray. I'm going to thank my other sponsors in a couple of minutes. Speaking of WellPoint, their CEO, president, whatever his title is, David Morales. His name came up in our off-air conversation. Not David Morales.
Not our David.
But his name.
But it's ironic. He's, how good David is with he's a shooter.
Is he really?
Oh my God! I went shooting with him one time with Stevie Pantatakis. The kid, I thought he was a marksman for the Marines or something. He's really good.
Really? I did not know this about him.
David is. David.
We need to have this conversation.
One of the best marksmen out of Lowell, Mr. Danis. I think he was on the Olympic team back.
Danis Mark. Danis was marking. Danis.
One of the fathers. I believe he was on one of the Olympic teams.
You're both gun enthusiasts. You both.
Well, Second Amendment. I don't look at it as I don't love guns. I just realized as a kid when I was younger how important the Second Amendment is. When one of my neighbors down the hill, she was home alone, and a guy came to the house when she was home alone and took a knife out and started cutting the screen in the door. She pulled out a shotgun and took a shot at him, and that was gone. Guy was gone. That was it. I mean, you have the right to defend yourself under Second Amendment. And going to school for government, Second Amendment is the Second Amendment for a reason. It's number one is freedom. Number two, protect yourself. And number three, my father told me what Admiral Yamamoto told him when a bunch of guys in the room. He went to Harvard for 4 years, and he said to my father, all the lieutenants at the end of the war, he says, I knew one thing. I said, one of the guys says, why don't you attack California after Pearl Harbor was going? He goes, because I knew there'd be an American behind every blade of grass with a gun. Forget the Army and the Navy. The American citizens all had guns. He goes, we weren't going on knife beaches. So,
that could be related to what some of the political battles today.
And that's just that simple. So it's truthful, and it's a right of inalienable right to protect yourself. And unfortunately, 99% of the time, you point it at somebody. If they're going to threaten you, they run away.
Massachusetts is a retreat state. Someone breaks into your house and you shoot them, you're liable to go to jail.
You have to retreat?
You have to retreat, or you have to be, I'm not an attorney, but the last time I took a course, if you have a split of a ranch and there's 3 bedrooms and someone's in the kitchen and he's coming down the hall, you've got to warn him, my mom done this, I'm that, and you have to be in direct danger before you do it.
And you have to be thinking that when somebody strangers in your house, right?
In the dark and everything else.
Governor King had it as your king of your house, castle. You just shot somebody and had questions later, but
I just Googled it again.
they just want to. No, I agree. Well, yeah, I just say that they want to. Why do you want to give criminals the advantage? But it seems to be, again, not call it the Democrats, it's the progressive
The
left.
good news, you can go to jail like they did down in the prison where they attacked the guards recently.
Oh, yeah.
And they get $6 million.
Yeah, we should go over Barack House of Correction. Not bad, huh? They attack the guards and they get $6 million.
The people who attacked the guards?
You didn't hear about that?
No.
Yeah, they just got a $6 million thing for the 8 of them over at Barack House of Correction. Yeah, they're all millionaires when they get out.
Massachusetts.
Yeah. When is it the law that you commit a crime, you lost all your rights, you get hurt, you're done. Somebody hurt you, beats the hell out of it. It's your fault. You started the crime. You started the violence. Where'd that go?
Last year, the parole board let out 22 out of 24 second-degree murderers and rapists. Now they're letting out a first-degree murderer, and he's probably trying to get back in to cash in on all of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you didn't hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I did not.
Right, Marty?
Yeah.
Now,
I heard it right from the sheriff's office. One of my friends called me last night and told me the story. He already knew.
How recent was this?
It was over the weekend, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Was Friday or something?
I saw an op-ed. I think it was the guards who were complaining that these are working conditions.
Yeah.
You know, this is what's going on in this state.
Jesus.
It's not.
Well, I don't know what's more shocking, that ruling or the fact that there's still people in the prison in Billerica. I thought they emptied the prisons after COVID and never put everybody back in.
Yeah.
They are, right? Well, they want to keep the streets safe.
First-degree murderer getting released in Massachusetts. Yeah. I'm shocked.
Unbelievable. Let's talk a little bit about the ICE activity in Lowell. Just kind of recap. Operations late last week. We had the story here on Inside Lowell, the photos. They were out in Centerville. They were arresting people. Once again, it looked like a roofing company or roofers that they arrested. Over the weekend, we find out from the Lowell Public Schools, a source told me that Superintendent Liam Skinner informed the school committee and the school administrators that students are starting to be affected. They're having family members detained and or deported. And there was even one case, as was stated to everybody, that a student was left at home alone as a result of his father being reported back to, I won't say the name of the country. It is in the thing, but I don't want to identify the kids or whatnot. But I asked a couple of follow-up questions. Do we know how long the kid was left alone for? Nobody has that answer for me, at least right away. But DCF was notified quickly, and the school administrators are doing what they're supposed to, right? Work with DCF, try to make sure these kids have some type of shelter, adult supervision, or whatever. Naturally, the nobody has any information on what if any charges, or was it simply a roofer? Are there criminal charges there? None of that information is being made available yet. Yeah. But you guys told me there's actually a press conference today, right? This morning, the U.S. Attorney, the U.S. Attorney's office out of Boston is holding a press conference today regarding not the Lowell cases, right? But
I don't know. They said they were going to explain. Supposedly, I heard just now on the radio coming over that they were going to explain all the cases going on and all the in Massachusetts.
Okay, so maybe they will touch on the Lowell. But
they were going to focus on the Milton case, but I could.
That's just one thing.
The Milton case is the case where the kid was actually arrested. It was prom weekend or something, or graduation weekend, and of course everybody up in arms.
Well, they never till they find out the truth, and then there's ones that still are up in arms. I mean, immigration is a mess, and they need to reform it, but.
So let me ask you this first question here. Does ICE, does the Department of Homeland Security, or somebody, do they need to provide more information about this operation? Because you grab the kid in Milton, and now for 3-4 days, everybody's, speculating and whatnot. Hopefully we get some information today that explains why they would do that. Ditto to the cases here in Lowell. Why are we getting just roofers? Is there something criminal besides the fact that they came into the country legally? Are we also rounding up the business owners who are employing these roofers and
I think that's what they're going to explain.
Jobs in American jobs?
Right.
What is the reason for this? Let the American people, let Massachusetts residents, and let Lowellians know what you're doing, and then I think we're adults. We can make up our minds of whether we're okay with this, we don't want it, we're uncomfortable with it, whatever the case may be.
My understanding is if they came in and arrested one of us three, you'll be detained until they press. If they don't press charges, you're going to be released. You work for the State Department. If you're arrested as an illegal immigrant, do you have any rights?
Technically not illegal. No, you
No,
have.
I didn't think you did.
Yeah.
So,
No.
but I would like to see ICE come forward.
Yeah.
If they obviously they got those 11 roofers, they knew they were coming into Lowell. Have the information ready, because it doesn't.
Right.
It look good to the general public.
Right.
But if
They're hurting themselves in the PR
Right.
war, but just by doing
But
this,
I
and
think
then
what
a
it is-
full week or two in the
Yeah,
Lowell
I think what it is, they don't want to announce it because they're getting jumped. Look at what happened to them in all these
Right.
places.
Oh,
They're physically out, you know.
No.
But I'm going to tell you, I'm willing to bet 99% of the time when they put out the information, they're going to be right and the public's
Right.
going to
Yeah.
be wrong.
Mark Healy this morning,
Yeah.
but the paper, oh, I'm demanding this, I'm demanding that.
Yeah.
Better watch what you demand for, because you could end up with a lot of egg on your face when they come out with
that's
the
what's going to
information.
happen.
Well, this is why I'm glad I have you two here, because I want to talk about Maura Healy. And
Right.
she's demanding answers now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, ICE and the federal government are demanding that she cooperate with them on
Right.
these operations. And
Right.
she's not cooperating. So,
Right.
you know, are you in a position to demand answers? How about cooperate? If you cooperate,
Right.
you might have these answers.
What?
Might you not? Or,
Oh, yeah.
What I'm afraid of is the police departments get a lot of money from the federal government, the DA's office. What happens if the federal government says, listen, we understand that they'll come to the scene, but if they're not assisting us, we're going to start withholding funds. What happens then?
Well, that's, by the way, that's not a hypothetical. That is the belief that, you know, by the way,
Yeah.
it's the same playbook Maura Healy's using on the MBTA communities with
Right.
the communities that are challenging her. Maybe Drake it again.
Again, she's
I'm gonna
doing the
guess-
same thing.
But, right. So
My guess is they're going to vote it down tonight.
on Thursday, the Department of Homeland Security and the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Office
Right.
released a list.
Right.
We published a story. If you go to InsideLowell.com, there's a number of stories. There's information out there from Attorney General Andrea Campbell, et cetera.
Yeah.
But they said Massachusetts is on the list of sanctuary
saw that,
states.
yeah.
12 of the 13 counties in Massachusetts,
Right.
including Middlesex County, are on the list of sanctuary counties. Whether they've officially declared themselves or not, they're being labeled as such in DC.
Right.
And then 12 Massachusetts cities or towns. The ones that jumped out to me naturally, Lawrence,
Yeah.
Concord,
Right,
because they're
Concord.
close to us. Boston, Cambridge are. Lowell not on the list.
Yeah.
I say bravo to Lowell for not making
ready for
that
it?
list.
And
by the way.
here I go.
I think they're doing something right.
I love Concord. I think it's beautiful because I worked for a congressman from there. They always did stuff like that, but they don't have one person living there. That's possibly.
Get on a motorcycle
Even
and
with the
you-
Black Lives Matter, there was only one guy in town, and he ended up moving. I mean, it's like, you know, they raised the property taxes so high that minorities couldn't afford to live there anyways. But they go along with the.
They,
So
if
funny.
you look at
It's
the
so
protests,
funny.
I'm on a motorcycle, you see these big protests. They're all in the affluent communities, you know, and, but don't take it from me or anyone else. My thing is, if you know a roofer who has a legitimate roofing business, ask him what it cost him.
Right.
If you know a plumber, an electrician, Obama sent home 3 million people.
3.5.
3.5, and what did
Right.
he use? They were taking jobs away from
Right.
Americans.
3.5 million,
That's
right.
what he deported them on. He had studies done how much
And you didn't-
they were taking away from them.
Right. Didn't hear boo.
Didn't hear boo.
But more than even ICE has ever done now. It's so funny.
Well, no, but we're told, you know the punchline, we're told that they contribute to the economy. They do pay payroll taxes.
Yeah.
They pay sales tax. They pay this and that. Left unsaid,
I don't know if-
when they're taking the job,
Right.
then that's other Americans who aren't paying that payroll.
But not
so
so-
it's not
Illegal to hire an illegal alien.
Of course it is.
Well,
That's
I'm
why
not-
I want to see
I'm
ICE
not
start going after the business owner, or at least
That's what we'll do.
I would imagine
Yeah.
that's the IRS. Somebody in these roofing companies, like, you want to get the roofers, okay, great. You better get the owner, the GM, whoever's responsible in the payroll department for verifying that information. Because I hire a server or a kitchen staffer at the Athenian,
Right.
I need a social security card.
right.
And I need a photo ID. And my payroll company, I got a new payroll company a couple of years ago, and they're like, and they send out these reminders. They sent out some information over the weekend, like, make sure you have your paperwork in order in
Right.
case somebody comes into your business and asks
I
for
got to
it.
do it this week.
Right.
I have to show my ID, my driver's license. that I am really a citizen before I can go any farther on what I'm pursuing now.
Right.
And that has to be done. But to me, the biggest craziest case was the Cape last year, that they sent the migrants or the illegal aliens up. And we don't want them here. There's no place for them. Half the Cape is empty now. Now they want
They all baked cookies and muffins.
Well,
and they handed it to them as they put them on the bus.
It was
2 days later.
Martha's Vineyard, where the president lives. They got rid of 70 of them.
But what was interesting is they just arrested 40 of them a couple of weeks ago. They were doing the domestic servants.
Right.
You want to see what it does? I bought a book on Jimmy Breslin over the weekend.
Oh, wow. Here's a guy, yeah.
It starts off with the son of Sam, but it also goes back a little bit in a couple of paragraphs to the Snakehead case. Remember down there? And Rockaway Beach, right?
Rockaway
next to Long
Beach,
where my family
Right.
lived. A tanker or a ship sank. What was it? 200 people drowned, all from China.
Yeah.
And I think when the cops went out there, said they heard these strange noises out on the beach. They went out there. People were running all over the place. And I think it was a woman who owned a variety store in New York City who was running this huge empire. And but I think about 200 people drowned, and about 160 made it to shore. But how many? That was one trip from
Right.
China.
One,
How many
right.
more of these are being done?
Right. I mean, but yeah, it's crazy. It's
And
true.
then they want to know why ICE was up by the Canadian border. And when you read the book, a lot of it comes through Niagara.
Yeah.
The rivers and things like that. There's no border between us and
No.
Canada. So they're coming in through those areas.
And then on the West Coast, you got in Vancouver, and what is it, British Columbia, is more Chinese than there are Canadians.
Yeah.
Population.
That was a huge case, the Snakehead case.
Yeah,
if
that
you
was,
ever
yeah.
want to see a good.
Right.
But this problem, though, today is somewhat different. So the border crossing, I get it. That's a
Right.
violation. But we've got a significant number, thousands here in Massachusetts alone, millions, who were in fact brought in through legal means by the president.
Right.
Joe Biden, his administration they went so far as to create a phone app,
Right.
and literally sent planes and brought people in.
Right.
Then dumped these people in airports, and they very famously were sleeping in Terminal E at Logan Airport and whatnot until they could find them housing. But so I feel for these people. I really do. They thought they were coming in legitimately.
Those ones, yeah.
What they intended to do once they got it doesn't matter. They were brought in at the invitation
They're getting screwed.
of they're getting screwed because now they got to either fend for themselves or find a way to get
Right.
back.
Because years ago, you could only come if you had family members here.
And I get it. It's a horrible situation to put them in. Many of them have young kids, so on and so forth. And I get the outrage, but where is the outrage for the people that did this? Why no outrage for the Biden administration
Well, that's why,
and the auto pen?
Right.
And why no outrage for Maura Healey that brought these people in here and then had them sleeping like cattle?
Right.
We're here. Oh, they treat them like cattle. They were sleeping on the floor, worse than cattle.
Because that's why the conversation is about ICE deporting everybody. So you won't talk about that.
Yeah. So you create a humanitarian crisis intentionally.
Right. Yeah.
There's a reason you do that. They knew this was a humanitarian crisis. They didn't stop the flights once they realized they didn't have housing for these folks. They didn't stop bringing them into Logan or other airports. They kept bringing them in.
Right. And what was the reason?
That's intentional. Intentional, create an intentional crisis to achieve some kind of a political
gain.
Well, the political end, I'm hearing the rumors over in Massachusetts, and I don't know if you'll ever prove it, and it's a rumor, that we have 900,000 migrants. It was to save a congressional seat.
Yes.
People were
100%. 100%.
That's actually not a
seat.
I don't think
and an electoral vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you do it in New York, in Massachusetts, in Illinois, in California.
Well, they said
you save electoral votes. You're taking them away from the states.
Well, there
that
were
will
8
go
states
the
that
opposite
should have
way on
gotten
you.
8. There were 8 states that lost electoral votes. We always lost. All the years I was in the state house, we always lost at least one congressman to a reduction. Or even if you grow, you don't grow enough. We always lost one every year I was there from 77 up. Every 10 years. This is the first time we didn't lose any.
We were expected to lose one
next
in 2020.
time, we could very easily lose 2 the next time.
They delayed
because they're going to not be able to count the illegals. Yeah.
They delayed the census in 2020.
Right.
And it was a Biden official who certified the census and counted however they counted.
Right.
But what if Vance or somebody else wins that election in 2028, they're not going to be able to do another COVID census delay.
No.
Like
The
they
one who
did.
did the census for years in Lowell was at 𝐾𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲. Mike 𝐾𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐲's cousin, I believe.
He didn't. He's
He ran it, I think.
well. He's just the head figure. Galvin was the one we ran it in the secretary's office.
They did a good job.
Right, but he's just the figurehead.
Okay.
He's just the guy we send out, and
Yeah, he was at the
yeah,
car. But
yeah.
the numbers were great, and they
Yeah.
did a really
Yeah.
a good job that you wouldn't
Yeah.
question it.
Right.
It was all, yeah.
Right.
It comes down to Galvin.
It comes out of the secretary's office, but he counted everybody. You know,
Right.
there was no way not to count everybody. But now, if they're not here, you're not going to count them. But 900,000 is not a lie. That's right about on the money.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
reading. And what happened was
Yeah, and that's
we're
one
losing
congressional seat.
people. We're losing. Now I'm reading we lose people that make 150,000. We're losing businesses.
Yeah.
So they bring in 900,000 migrants. Well, now they need housing. That's why you have a housing shortage. And it's not a housing shortage. I do the radio and I'm getting texts. There's plenty of apartments in Lowell, but
Yeah.
they're not
Right.
low income.
They're not low income.
And
yeah.
now we got the MBTA problem with Healy, and
Right.
that's going to come back.
Right.
It's
And when does low income stop? Like I said, if they had to put an S8 on every house in the city, just saying Lowell alone, not Compton, if you had to put an S8, Section 8 on every house, you pass out. Never mind the obvious ones that are low income.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with low income people, but at some point you can't have a whole city be low income.
I just
It's
feel
got to be
bad
able to
for
work
them
for
because
itself. You
No,
know?
it
They were
becomes
promised. They were
Even
promised something
worse,
that they're not
yeah.
getting.
Yes.
And they're promised it coming
Yeah,
up from
right.
So, and the other thing,
Political pawns. They are political pawns in a game right
Except for the
now.
criminal ones that were.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I think, well, except maybe for a couple of senators and Congress people, you know,
Right.
most Americans are
Right.
okay with getting the criminals the hell out of
Right,
here, no,
right,
at
right.
any cost. There's some lunatics who will go down there and have margaritas with
Right.
them or try to storm an ICE facility, but most Americans are okay. It gets politically tricky in the case in Lowell, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as we know, roofers. All they did was come in here illegally and work.
Right. Well, that was going to happen soon because, first of all, I know a ton of, we all know the contractors. They were all talking about that.
Yeah.
And the contract, it's the whole group. It's not, so no, and the homeowner pays them. So they're not paying payroll taxes or anything. The head guy is illegal. The whole thing is illegal. There's several of them. I can name one right now, and you would know who it is. And matter of fact, a friend of mine was telling me a couple months ago, he had a contract ready to go on a house, and they came in and offered it for $5,000 less because they don't pay their people taxes.
Right.
So what happened was they put out the 800 number just recently. Did you notice that? ICE put out an 800 number about 2 weeks ago. Now the stuff starts happening because all the guys know.
All the legit roofers.
I got 12. I got 12 calls over the weekend. Guys said, "Do you have that 800 number?" What do you? Yeah.
So when I told
plumbers,
this,
electricians,
Yeah.
all the
Right.
trades.
Yeah, they're not paying taxes.
I told this story Friday on the show with Leslie
Right.
Boder, but 2016, the Trump-Clinton election. I don't go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know what? It's 3 o'clock at this point. I
Yeah,
gotta get
yeah.
up to do the radio at 5, so I'm just staying up.
Right.
I start looking at my phone, and there's a text there from a local roofing company.
Yeah.
The son of the
Yeah.
local roofer said to me, "You evil genius! My father is crying right now," because I had told him Trump's going to win.
Yeah,
And he said,
me
"Because
too.
of
Yeah.
what you were telling
Yeah,
me."
I was up. I was up watching it too. And what did Wolf Blitzer do? He's pulling his hair out. This can't be happening. She's up by 90%. It was over. Yeah.
It's going to take 3 days to count. Teddy and I ended the show at 10.
Yeah.
We both knew this.
Right.
It was coming.
Oh, on the most recent one. But,
Right.
the roofers
Yeah.
are excited. Other business people are excited. The one thing I think the left is not realizing here, and this is when, as I talked about the obvious political issue, get the criminals out of here, nobody cares. It starts to get dicey with the students being left alone, whatever, but
Right.
the roofers and stuff. So the left would like to think this is a winning issue for them.
No.
Maura Healey, I demand answers. Ed
It's not.
Markey, Elizabeth, they're all demanding it. And yet last week, Boston mayoral debate, liberal Boston, Massachusetts.
Right. Yeah.
Joshua Kraft
Right.
tries to out-woke
Yeah.
Michelle Wu and gets booed off the stage.
Yeah.
By
There you go.
who?
Yeah.
The blacks and the Hispanics
Right.
in the audience who are like, hey,
Right.
everything that you have to give them
Right.
because it's a humanitarian crisis, what about our humanitarian
Right.
crisis? Legal immigrants,
Right.
who are like, hey, we had to jump through hoops to get here the right way. We couldn't bring our brother, our sister, our aunt, our parents in here. We got denied.
Right.
You're flying them up here
Right.
for free and giving them everything. these folks have turned, and I'm not sure that the folks here in Lowell demanding that people step up and speak out against the ICE operations, don't be so confident that you're in the majority of the city.
Even the ones, like I said, became citizens. A lot of people I know that worked within the state, and even here in the city, that came in legally from South America, are pro-life, they're pro-church. They think the Democratic Party's insane.
Yeah.
They're not, I mean, my next door neighbors from Africa, they go to church on Sunday. They're gone the whole day. They're Republicans. Across the street, a Muslim guy, he's Republican. They go, none of this, no, we're not, what's wrong with your party? It's not my party anymore. They walked away from me years ago. President Kennedy was my leader. That was it.
You were a Democrat for
but I mean, we saw it start changing around right after 9/11. And like I said, when I left the state committee now has people on it that are not elected by the people, and they're all progressive lunatics. I mean, they're insane, half of them. I mean, seriously, they can't have a conversation. But the point is, they're the ones that decide whether you get 15% or not to get on the ballot. If you don't get that 15%, you don't get. I mean, Galvin's a sitting Secretary of State, and he runs for re-election a couple terms ago, and he loses to a city council in Boston who's a nobody at the convention. But he's right, nice kid.
But then he wins.
But he wins the thing. But he still loses at a sitting secretary.
Galvin lost at that convention.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, I knew he was in trouble in the election, and then he eked it out.
Yeah,
but.
He's never in trouble in the election because the public knows they like his election stuff. They don't even know the rest of the stuff he does, but the election is the main thing.
They like his election stuff, or they're afraid of what the devil might be better than
the devil. Well, they know he's got paper ballots, and that's what the thing is. And he's always saying, "I'll always have paper ballots." But the point is, the party's still trying to get rid of him. They put it up to a 50%, in whatchamacallit. That's why I say at some point they should start making the parties pay for the primaries.
100%. But you guys are both, for the audience that isn't aware of you two, both of you were longtime Democratic members. You attend conventions, right? I attended conventions. I was
on the state committee for 18 years.
You door knocked for Hillary Clinton in 2008.
New Hampshire.
I did too.
I was the one that came up with that. I didn't come up with the statement.
Right.
Someone said
One of the best lines ever.
Right.
I saw it in 𝐼𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐲 not too long ago. He said but I was up in New Hampshire and someone said to me, she can't win. And I said, how come? She said, well, they remind everyone of her ex.
Right.
And I said, that's devastating.
Hillary Clinton reminds everybody of their ex-wife.
But see, then Hillary Clinton at the time, I was up there too, because that's how I ended up with Bill Clinton. And Mike DeMaris, so we all ended up with Clinton through Roger Lau.
I was on it. We were up there.
Yeah. Right. And
Wait, you turned on Paul Tsongas?
Well, here's the point. Here's the point.
What's the matter with you?
Well, I don't. You want to go into that? Yeah. So, anyways, the point I'm making is very simple: is that Hillary was Second Amendment. She was also Democratic Leadership Council, which was a moderate on social issues and a little more liberal on financial. You know, but she was a conservative moderate. She wasn't. She was for the Second Amendment. She thought, we should even shut down the whole immigration thing, like we did from 1926 to 1965, because there's nothing says you have to have immigration. Most of Europe had no immigration up until they all walked in a couple of years ago. You can't immigrate to France. You could not immigrate at all.
Yeah, I thought when you became, you went for, you went to another country. For either hardship or government hardship. I forget the term.
Yeah, it's people that they're prosecuted in the country. What's it called?
Asylum.
Asylum.
Yeah.
But I thought you had to go to the next country.
You do.
You don't fly into the United States from 13 different countries. I want asylum.
But again, this is where people need to start looking at the evil that was the Biden administration. Saying, well, they flew them in. They didn't just hop on planes and come in.
They walked all the way up.
You cross the border. You want to cross the folks who started down below Panama and walked across with the mules or whatever. Great. That's
international law.
People were flown in.
Marty's right. International law says you have to walk across. You go to the next country.
Yeah. What do we do with the people that have been here so long that they had young kids, and these kids are now have wound their way through the school system, the Lowell school system,
they told them if you go home and apply, you can come back. Now,
would you trust them?
Yes.
Would you trust them to let you come back?
I'll tell you why. I talked to someone who was down at the football games in January down in Florida, and I don't know if they had a cab, but they met a gentleman who came here illegally. I think he was Cuban, and he got caught, went to jail. Went to jail, and he was sent home. Went home, applied to come back to the United States, and he was granted the opportunity to come back, and he's a citizen now. So they will do it.
I'll tell you what, it would be a tremendous political ploy by Trump, even if he just did it once and just did it publicly.
He said that
one of
that's
the
the
people
law.
that voluntarily went back, if they applied and they
Yeah.
were brought in,
Yeah.
it would be a huge. If you did it with enough and publicized, it would be a huge.
They have to have
message.
policy in place. The Trump administration.
Yeah.
But you can't if you get enough, you can't. We don't have enough housing
They don't
for them
listen.
right now to put
They
them in.
listen to the advocates. Don't you do this? Don't you? That's how they're coming into the country.
Right.
A lot of this is advocates who go out and recruit and do these.
They were
things.
funded by USAID, but they're not anymore now.
Right.
Yeah. That's it.
And I love advocates, but if you're listening, I'll tell you what. I had this conversation over the weekend about some of the crime in the low neighborhoods,
Right.
and it's low.
Right.
But we're talking about various crimes, gangs, and things like that. You'll see people protest and really look at it, especially if it's on TV. You see about 15 people go into the neighborhoods that are affected, go into the housing projects, and see what they say. They support it probably at 90%. They cannot afford to move. And as a retired mailman, I'll tell you, when a neighborhood goes down, the people who live there can't afford to move.
Right.
They're stuck with what's
stuck,
there.
yeah.
And that's where I take my background from and where I get my thought from is the people who can't move.
Right. And the thing is, years ago, the way it worked out was you came into the United States, you had to have a family member here first. So you stayed with them.
Yeah, to have a
Right.
Go look at Canada's
Yeah.
immigration. As
Right.
the Canadians lecture Americans
I know.
about immigration.
Right.
If you look at Canada's immigration policies,
Yeah.
you have to have a sponsor. You have to prove that you have a sponsor. You have to have a clean criminal record.
Right.
But you also, there's another one in there that would drive the left nuts if you did it. They have to speak the language.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You have
yeah.
to speak
Oh,
the
really?
language.
Yeah,
Now,
you do.
that's in
Yeah.
their immigration
Right,
paper.
right.
Now, what that language is, I don't know. Is it French in Quebec and English everywhere
Yeah.
else? Or do you have to speak both French and English? And by the way, that's not the exception.
Right.
That's the norm, because what you want
Right.
is when you welcome immigration,
Right.
which America did forever. We are a country of immigrants,
Right.
but you welcomed immigration to assimilate.
Right.
Now it seems like, I'm watching, the college graduation ceremonies over the weekend, the Harvard and the MITs and the Tufts, and they're not waving American flags. They're not proud
No.
to have been able to come to America and get a college education. They're waving Palestinian flags.
And that's what brought down the Soviet Union. It wasn't it was 129 languages. I was on a Navy ship one time. The captain told me, see that Russian ship right there was in Norfolk. We were going out of Norfolk Harbor. And he said, see that Russian ship was in for a visit? They speak 8 languages on that thing. On that ship, he says, we just take out the coining tower. We don't have to, it's not easy to sink a ship. We take out the tower. The officers can't talk. They sit still in the water. He says they 8 different languages. The Soviet Union was taken down by they didn't have one language as the main language, and that's what happened to them. You have to have one common language, and that's why in most of Europe, like France, I don't think even to this day, the only way you could become a French citizen was you had to join the French Foreign Legion, serve for 5 years honorably, and then you could become a French citizen, or you had to be born there of the soil or born of the blood, a citizen here, and you go there. They didn't have. Most of the European countries had no immigration that way at all. Zero up until they got raided by the Europeans. They had the World War II. They had to, yeah.
Their losses were so heavy.
Yeah.
I think the
40.
Turks, and they brought in people from Turkey.
Yeah.
And that happens. I found out over the weekend, too, where you need a passport to go to Canada now.
Yes.
If you have a drunk driving offense, you can't go into Canada. You can't move to Canada with a drunk driving. That's what I heard.
Right.
And I didn't check.
That is so discriminatory, and that's so totalitarian, isn't it? Justin Trudeau.
I know.
I thought he was Mr. Woke.
Right.
Jeez.
Well,
I don't know if that's what I was told. That's how strict they are. So
Alrighty.
well, his name is really actually what is it? It's who's the president of Cuba? It's really Justin Castro, right? I mean, it looks pretty real.
Crazy.
Yeah.
stuff.
His mother was down there for how many years, and the father was with what's her name, the Jean, what's her name, playing around with her. Remember? You see the picture of Castro when he was a kid?
Yes.
They go, "This is no, it's Justin Trudeau. No, that's Castro." I go, "What?"
Greg Pappas, Marty, Lorrey joining us here on the Daily Pulse. We'll continue the discussion for a little while longer. We got to get these two back together, though, because we're not going to get to half the stuff on my list. Let me just quickly thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Massillon, New Hampshire. Find them online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that goes the extra mile. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell, Southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in our communities through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. Next Pirates home game, Saturday, June 21st.
Before we go, just a funny side from we were up in New Hampshire with the Clintons that day.
Yeah.
Campaigning.
Remember who else was there? The kid that worked with me in the congressional office was a congressman. Who was it? He was standing right behind you. Anthony, he worked with me in Chester's office. Tony Weiner was right behind
yes.
us. Yeah. Tony,
we're
yeah.
rolling-
You got
Yeah.
you two hung around
We're
with
in
Tony
the-
Weiner.
Well, I worked with them.
We're in a motorcade.
It was a congressional aide, yeah.
And it's part of the Clinton. We're going to different towns. There's
Right.
probably 6, 7 cars. And over the news comes the one of the guys running for president, the senator from South Carolina,
John Edwards.
John Edwards.
Oh, yeah.
My wife
there
has
you go.
cancer, but I'm staying in the race.
Yeah.
All these political
Yeah.
people who, you've been around a
Right.
long time. Everyone's like, what?
Right.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
You're staying in the race.
Right.
Turns out, though, he had a
Right.
side piece.
Right.
I found that out in the car.
Right.
And I heard a lot of
Yeah,
that up in
and
Manchester.
Uma was there too. Uma was standing next to Tony because
yes.
Stevie Panch comes
Uma
over.
Abedin, yeah.
Yeah, because Uma.
Hillary Clinton's right hand.
Well, it was Tony's wife.
Yeah.
So Stevie comes over and he says, "There's some congressman in the back that knows you from New York. He wants to talk to you." I turn around, oh, he says, "That's Tony." I says, he worked for Chester in Washington when I was working for Chester in the district. We go back and forth. Yeah, but he was standing right behind Marty.
That was the funniest.
Uma was right behind him.
Besides the Hillary comment reminding everyone of their ex, I'm staying in the race. My wife is.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Whoa. Okay.
So now that one other thing, we're going on the Castro thing, real quick.
But by the way, at this point, I got about 10 minutes left.
All right,
I'm just
real
going to
quick.
let the two of you
What do you think the problem is with Prince Harry, with the crown and all the stuff going on? What's the problem? What is that whole issue?
His wife?
No. Look when Diana died. Well, who's she? The guy, the prince of the guard, the head of the captain of the guard was with Diana all that time. Look at the picture. Everybody in England will tell you. You look at the picture of the captain of the guard that was with Diana because Prince Charles wasn't even hanging around. He was still going to see the other one. The guy's childhood picture is Harry.
Yeah.
Everybody in England will tell you he's not Charles's son. That's not a
having
joke.
affair
That's
with-
serious.
Yeah, he was in the cavalry.
That's serious. That's the problem. Yeah, that's
He was in
serious.
the cavalry.
He was in the cavalry, right?
Yeah.
Prince Harry is not really Prince Charles' son?
That's right. Everybody in England will tell you that because
He looks like him.
He looks just like the Prince of the God. They look at childhood pictures of him and the Prince of the.
You sure this wasn't a Photoshopped AI?
No, these are more than I've seen it more than so many different places. Yeah, and that's because what else is the problem?
King Charles was just up in
Right.
Canada.
Right.
Did you read anything about it?
Yeah. No.
Could care less.
Right. And he reminded.
Big deal when
He reminded.
He was in Lowell.
He came to Lowell, that's right.
Well, when he came
I
to
was delivering mail on mine.
Right. Well, when he came to Lowell, he was at the State House first, and we all met him. We got to go by, but we couldn't shake his hand. So Thalia Reed, a Greek girl lady, right? She gives him a big hug, and everybody's freaking out. And the guard said, "No, it's okay." He was Prince Charles, right? And I went up to him and I said, "Just wanted to tell you, Your Highness," I said, "my mother's 32nd cousin from the Queen removed." He said, "Well, I said, "Her maiden name is Peveril." "Oh, Lady Peveril." I goes, "Yeah, that was my mother's relative." "Oh, so we're cousins." And that was my exchange with him.
Your ears are a little smaller than his.
Yeah, but I mean, 33rd removed, right?
I
But
was
isn't that weird?
surprised.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Then he came to Lowell, like you said.
I was surprised that rumor came out of England, though, about it was well known she had an affair with a member of the. I think he was in the cavalry.
That's why they killed her.
He was a polo guy, I think, maybe, but
But he was the captain of the guard,
yes, he was.
and he was the one who taught her how to ride horses. If you look at all the pictures of him as a youth, it's a spitting image of Harry, and everybody in England will tell you that's the problem. And that's why Diana got off.
Mistresses, and especially.
Of course, there's no
It's
stuff like
crazy.
that.
Wait, Diana got off.
They murdered her, you know that.
she was being chased by paparazzi. What do you mean?
The guy was drunk driving the car.
Yeah,
Their
I mean,
driver.
you can. That wasn't an accident. They couldn't let her marry the what was it, the #1 Islamic guy and richest guy, and that was all. Everybody, you know what I'm saying. That's nothing.
So
Remember what they say about conspiracy theories. It's the truth that comes out later.
Yeah.
So speaking of conspiracy theories, I do want to wrap up with the. You guys started having a conversation about guns when we first came here,
Yeah.
and eventually you turned to the guns and the Kennedy assassination. You're both Kennedy assassination buffs, and neither one of you believes the Warren Commission report.
No. I mean, his own family didn't. Joe Kennedy told me to his face it was a lie. Senator Kennedy did drinking one night with a bunch of us, even guys from Lowell, 3 o'clock in the morning, said it was all a lie. You know,
A lot of them think it was Dulles who was behind it.
It was Dulles.
Because the mafia was involved to a degree, and the mafia was involved with Dulles to get Cuba back. Remember the Bay
Right.
of Pigs? And John Kennedy fired Dulles.
Right.
He was the head of the CIA. How he got the job, I don't know. It was supposed to go to Donovan after the war.
it was Donovan, yeah.
And Dulles got
It was all through that one law firm in New York. There's a law firm in
brother.
New York.
Yeah.
That created the OSS. Sullivan and Cromwell created
Dulles
the OSS.
Airport isn't named after the CIA director. It's named after his brother.
really?
The Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Right.
I did not realize.
But he told President Kennedy, there's that famous picture, and Bobby's looking at the president. He says, President Kennedy says, I don't care who. He says, you're fired. He goes, do you know who I am? And Joe Kennedy, the Bobby Kennedy, the Secretary of whatchamacallit now, Joe, I used to drive him home with Chester sometimes. He told me in the car one night, he says, Greg, he goes, I remember being at the house. I was 9 years old. My father comes home and he says to, my mother, what was her name? His mother, Bobby Kennedy's wife's
Ethel.
He goes, Ethel, he says, I remember calling my mom, Ethel, come here. You're not going to believe what just happened today. He goes, Jack fired the CIA director. He goes, you know what he said to me? He says to me and Jack, do you know who I am? And I goes, well, I'm the Attorney General. He said, bro, who do you think you are? 3 years later, he's on the Warren Commission. And he was a civilian. He was running everything out of Georgetown. He was connected. And the mafia stuff wasn't something new. Remember, the OSS and them used the mafia in World War II to guard all the docks.
And they were using the mafia to help overthrow Castro.
And here's the other problem.
But during the docks thing in World War II, they did keep Boston safe, New York, California. They covered the docks, made sure nobody was infiltrating through the docks. So we had a working relationship with them. Now they felt like they got cut off.
And at the same time that this all going on, Bobby Kennedy puts an investigation to the Teamsters.
Yes.
Hoffa.
Yeah.
And it was Billy Bonanza. He wrote a book on it. I think it was on My Father. But he gets into that. The mafia told Joe Kennedy, who worked with them,
Right.
tell your kid to back off.
Right.
And he had a
Right.
stroke. He never got to his kid.
Right.
And the mafia doesn't care.
Right.
You were given a message. You didn't send it.
Right. I mean, it was so bad that story. I remember Ted telling us, Senator Kennedy saying, it took them like 6 months to figure out when their father said yes, he meant no. And when he said no, he meant yes. So the lady, are you hungry? No, he meant yes. And
Did Dulles
it was so,
fire you?
the time was so different. The medical stuff was really,
Yeah,
Yeah.
There was a lot going on.
a lot going on.
And,
Which takes us to Dealey Plaza on that fateful November day,
Right.
1963. You said something interesting about radio chatter.
Well,
the Dallas police chief directing people.
Yeah, the Dallas police chief was in the front car, and he's yelling, there's a shooter on the overpass, which is where they were going under.
And that's on the radio recording.
Right on the radio.
I've never- I-
You
that's
can, I
something
think
I
you
didn't
might
know, and
still
I've
be
read
able
a
to
ton
get
of
it. Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
And then I stood in the window at the book depository because I went down there. My wife's from Texas, and there's if Oswald was the only shooter, why didn't he just, when he was right there in front of him, he waited till he went 100 yards down the street? Not only that, they found out later there was a yellow marking painted on. You could see it on the Zapruder films on the road.
So this is the part I want to talk about. So the car was the motorcade was approaching Dealey Plaza,
Right.
And Oswald had a clear frontal shot.
Clear 25
if from
right on.
that whoever was at that window.
Right.
I'm assuming Oswald was. He
Right.
was the patsy, right?
Right.
But he had a clear shot coming in.
Right.
He doesn't take a shot then.
No.
He waits till the limo does this really awkward 120-degree turn.
And the building
starts
was
going away from him, but towards the.
Marking on the street corner.
Okay, so he's
Towards
going
the-
towards
towards
the
the
grassy
grassy
knoll.
knoll.
but there's a marking on the street corner.
They had somebody had painted, and there's a Zapruder film. You can see they're white stripes, but they were yellow. painted the night before these 2 white stripes on the thing, which is the triangulation shot. Now these guys that were doing, they were down in Texas, down in Mexico.
This stuff's all new to me, by the way.
No, it's actually coming out on the Kennedy stuff.
Watch this
The Richardson, this guy Richardson, who was very well, he was training at his ranch down in Texas how to shoot moving targets, triangulation. You know what triangulation is?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right, and they were down there training. They were going to get Castro. When the Castro thing fell apart, which they even tried some stuff even after Kennedy promised Castro that they weren't going to do it, and it was only months before the same team supposedly was sent up. Now this guy Danny Sheehan, who's been around Washington for 100 years, he's 80 years old. Go watch the thing with Jesse Michaels. He actually tells you, he says the shooter on the grass, was this guy David Morales, who was one of the guys, not our David friend, not our friend.
This is where David Morales' name came in from Wellpoint. Not you, David
Not
Morales
you, David.
from
Yeah,
Wellpoint, but
right.
His head gets hit and goes back.
Right.
I remember that whole thing. And
He says, there's you can pick out the pictures of people in the blur of some of the people who were there, and one was on the.
So you're talking about a podcast appearance from this Danny Sheehan guy, named Jesse Michaels
podcast
recently, right?
Recently, just a couple of days ago.
Okay.
And he's been around Washington. He worked in President Kennedy's administration. He was 20 years old. The guy's 80 and he looks like he's 60.
And he's pointing out people along the scene that are in photos from that day.
And he
people
says,
such as
well, he mentioned and they mentioned one of the CIA's top, almost his second in charge deputy standing in a nice hat. I mean, the people who were there was crazy. They said Oswald did take a shot, but he was the one that hit the curb because you couldn't hit there's no way you could hit the thing.
He hit the governor too. I think he might have hit the governor with a shot.
Well, they said that he shot one. He did hit the curb. Remember the piece the curb got up and hit the guy in the eye and cut his eye on the car. Because by the time the car got down, he was out of the range of the whatchamacallit. Now Oswald, he said,
what was the gun originally declared in the assassination, and then what
Oswald was told
to be?
Supposedly Oswald was told not to shoot him. It was just Oswald. He was just going to scare him, and they were going to blame it on Cubans and get him out of there. But that's how he became a patsy. They did have a plot. He didn't know about it. Now that's what's his name said. The gun that they found in the thing upstairs on the 6th floor, which the girl sitting on the 5th floor saw nobody run by, was a Mauser, German Mauser, and they even show it holding it. Right. The next day, it's a 𝐾𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, which was an Italian gun in World War II that Oswald happened to buy.
So you know this for a fact.
Oh, that's a fact.
The first day they declared it a Mauser.
Yeah, that's
they showed it in pictures.
That's in all the books.
It's clearly not a Mauser. I mean,
no,
it's
clearly a
clearly
Mauser. It says it right on, yeah. And then the next day they wouldn't explain how all of a sudden it was a 𝐾𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, which they got a picture of Oswald holding one in his backyard with a side shooter that he bought in the catalog 6 weeks before.
What was remember? At the police station, they were holding up a rifle for the media and stuff. Which one was that?
That was probably I don't know. I can't say for sure.
I'd have to see it.
Yeah, you have to see it. Yeah.
But you guys know the difference between these guns. You're both
I've seen the mouse.
But this is like you can read 5 or 6 different there's many books you can read on Kennedy assassination by famous, and the pictures are in it. That was known from day one.
The Mausers are very distinct.
And the Warren Commission wouldn't talk about it.
If you look at the old war movies, the Germans, you look at the old pictures, those big heavy guns.
Big, yeah.
Those are Mausers.
Yeah.
And they're accurate to 2,000-3,000 yards.
The Guyano's on.
Yeah, they're really quite the gun.
Yeah.
And I've seen.
And that's what they found in the depository.
That's what was up there.
That would make sense.
But it didn't match to Oswald's, the picture they had of him buying a 𝐾𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, which is a crappy Italian rifle that the Italians were getting rid of because the barrels were bent to a certain degree. And he's holding one in a picture from 6 weeks before in his backyard. So they never addressed that in the Warren Commission. Never once addressed it.
Who sits on the Warren Commission? I get a copy
Yeah.
at home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
Jerry
who's
Boyd.
who.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. But Alan Dulles is brought in. A civilian who's no longer part of they bring him in to run the Warren Commission because the Supreme
when they're trying
Warren didn't want to do it.
Listen, when they're trying to cover somebody up, they bring in a retired the Mueller report. The Mueller report wasn't investigating Trump-Russia collusion. The Mueller report was covering up the Obama-Biden spying on the Trump.
Look at the Robert Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
Very little is known about the second gunman. But,
Wait.
Yeah.
What second gunman?
There was the second gunman.
Sirhan.
Well, Sirhan's gunman.
I was just reading.
Well, there's a problem with that because there were 7 bullet holes and his gun only holds 5 bullets. So.
Wait, there were 7 bullet holes?
Yeah. Hit from the back. He was in front of him.
So I know RFK Jr. says my father was Sirhan did not kill him.
Right. And they
was a guy.
But there were 7 bullet
you know
holes
who it is.
and his gun only holds 5?
Los Angeles Police had 7. Right.
There was a
go ahead.
union official.
Right.
He was a From the auto. He was from the auto. And he was very close to Bobby Kennedy. He was on the inner staff. Well, he gets hit.
Yeah.
And the last time Sirhan came up when he was alive, came up for parole, he was ready to testify. He didn't shoot anybody. He didn't shoot. There was the second gunman.
And he was behind Bobby because Bobby got powder burns on the back of his ear, which means the gun has to be within a foot from him.
Close.
He was way back. And they said the guy who did it was that security guard who was a Cuban national who was part of the team that was going after. They named his name too.
Yeah. And this guy,
Not a joke.
like I said, he was a Teamster official. Not Teamster. He was United Auto Workers.
Right.
Very close to Bobby Kennedy.
Yep.
And he was ready to testify at the parole hearing. It was not Sirhan. And he got hit.
Right.
So he was down, and he was involved, and he saw the bullets and how he got hit. Really quite interesting when you get into the assassination.
They wanted him out. They don't want the CIA didn't when that group wanted nothing to do with the Kennedys. I mean, even Ted, when you can say what you want about the bridge, but the car's got damage on the back. How's the car have damage on the back?
There was always speculation.
He got bumped off the bridge.
There was another girl in the car.
Well, there was another girl in the car.
Yeah.
Mary Jo was in the back seat sleeping. He didn't know she was back there. There was a woman in the front that he had her pocketbook.
The story, he was fooling around with Mary Jo. Wasn't that the story?
Right, but in those cars in those days, you couldn't see, there was low. You couldn't see anybody. Plus, he was drinking, right? He goes to the bridge. He was in the front seat with because what's her name? Joan left him after that. There was another woman. He got her out, but her pocketbook got left behind. He didn't know Mary Jo was in the back seat. Those things were like couches, you could, and the other thing was there was damage on the back of the car. He said he got bumped from behind. Well, who was that?
Ted Kennedy said he got bumped from behind?
Where he got bumped from behind. That's how he got knocked off. And who was in 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 that night? 3 different staff people saw there was a bar across the street, and they were going back and forth. It was like a big open air party thing. Howard Hunt, the CIA agent was there. Then his son, when Howard Hunt dies.
Lamar Hunt?
No,
going to the Kansas City Chiefs?
No, he wrote a book, and he said my father told me when he was dead that he was a 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, and then he bumped Ted off the bridge.
Ted was parked in the car, and a police cruiser did see them and moved them.
Yes.
And
yes.
So there was, I believe, the cruiser said there were 2 people in the front seat.
Right.
And but Nixon hated the Kennedys and said they're going to cover this all up.
Right.
He sent a retired New York police detective, and the guy, I saw him on TV. He says I walked in knee deep and touched the bumper.
Yeah.
That's how deep the car was. He says I could.
It was on its side. It was on its side, but
No, you're in it. The tides come up and down.
Right.
But the guy said I got to the bumper.
Yeah.
So this is what you're talking about.
Right. So
now you know why I believe in the Bindenbergers and the Trilateral Commission.
And the chief of police at the time was the uncle of a girl I worked with in Chester's office from Concord. So
That's why I say people hate Trump.
It always comes back to Lowell. See?
Yeah.
Trump's going after tariffs. He's going after countries. And the elite, the rich, the Bindenbergers, they love markets. They love new places to go and manufacture. They want consumers. That's the one driven part of this whole economy is consumers.
Right.
And Trump is kind of rattled that a bit, and he rattled it the first time.
Yes. Yeah.
They're not happy with them.
All right.
So,
well,
anyways.
we're going to have to end it here because I have to go.
Okay.
Greg Pappas, Marty, Lorrey. We got to get you back together at some point. We'll get you back in.
Okay. We have some fun.
You got to come back together because there's so much stuff on my list we didn't even get to. Because I do want to talk about the Supreme Court, which had a huge ruling last week backing Trump's ability to deport folks with, ironically, a 7-2 vote. Elena Kagan.
What to say about all
the Republican
I told
appointed
you,
judges
she's great.
on that.
She's really good.
And they're going to have a bunch of every single day. There's new, injunctions and whatnot. So the Supreme Court will be very busy this
They
this
just
summer.
came out with a decision last week, and I don't know if it was guns or immigration.
It was a gun
It
one.
wasn't a full vote. It was 7-2, but it wasn't a major decision. It was one of these quickies.
Didn't it move it back to the lower court or something, the appeals court?
Yes, they sent it back to Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And
In other words,
I
you better
didn't
get it
buy
right
on
away.
the weekend.
Yeah.
There was a book on how the Supreme Court does these quick decisions to change law. I didn't buy it. I might go back and get it.
All right. Well, if you read it, if you buy it and read
I
it,
got Jimmy Breslin, so
I'll give you the expense account. You can buy it on the InsideLowell card.
it was like $5 or so.
Greg Pappas, Marty, Lorrey, guys,
you.
thank you so
It was
much.
fun.
It was a blast. I wish I had more time to keep rolling. But we're gonna.
I wish we get to your stuff.
It's my ploy to bring you back. Okay.
Okay, yeah, be
All
fine.
right. Thank you to Greg.
Thanks,
you to
guys.
Marty. Most of all, thank you as well for tuning into the Daily Pulse here on this Monday, June 2nd. The Daily Pulse, as we like to say, we keep our finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around it. Till tomorrow, everybody stay safe. Enjoy this rapidly improving weather. We got a heat wave coming before you know it, and I'll catch you on the other side.